Minutes. First, I want to follow up on the comments of our chair of the full committee. I share the concern he's raised over Afghanistan and Pakistan and the magnitude of the mission, the doability of what we're trying to accomplish. And in 2 years, we'll be approaching the 10th year anniversary of our military involvement in Afghanistan. We'll have been there for a decade, and I think probably beyond any contemplation, we will be there in 2 years. So it'll be a decade we've been in Afghanistan, and the country, the questions the country has will intensify, as they should. Where are we headed? Are we going to be in Afghanistan for a second decade? Do we have a military role here other than counterterrorism? One of the real flashpoints for me is we have provided a phenomenal amount of military support for Pakistan. They haven't changed the paradigm, as you pointed out. And more pernicious, there are elements within the Pakistani intelligence services, the ISS, Directorate S, that may be working at cross purposes with us. And I don't know how we can possibly be funding the Pakistani military if elements of the military or intelligence services are actually working against us and having the effect of killing our troops next door. So I wonder, how can we structure our military support to Pakistan in a way that ensures they make the paradigm shift, which they've been telling us now for years. They recognize this is their war, the Pakistani Prime Minister says, but they haven't acted yet like it's their war. So how do we structure our military support to force a paradigm shift and to ensure that the ISS is not working at cross purposes? To follow up on our subcommittee chair's question on the Palestinian Authority, I'm concerned, and I think your testimony.
I think that each of your questions really poses a central challenge to our foreign policy and our security. You know, we've had troops in Korea for 50 years. We've had troops in Europe for 50 years. We've made long-term commitments that were in the beginning motivated by the threat of the Soviet Union and the potential of a nuclear war. And it was a very clear threat. You know, everybody could look on a map and you could see, you know, the Soviet Union, and you could hear their leaders say they were going to bury us, and you could, you know, see the crises along the way with Khrushchev banging his shoe and President Kennedy, you know, dealing with the Cuban Missile Crisis and all the rest of it. There was a framework in which we could really understand and deal with what was, ironically, a conventional threat, you know, and we deterred it, and we basically contained it, and we waited for the Soviet Union to collapse under its own weight. We face, in my view, a very serious threat, but it's of such a different nature that we are still trying to figure out the best way to contend with it. And so a lot of what we're talking about, your questions, my answers, our strategic reviews, you know, we're struggling with how on earth do we deal with people who are scattered around the world, concentrated in a few places, finding havens, using and perverting religion to motivate their followers, using modern tools like the internet to wreak havoc. I mean, this is a very different challenge, and I think that we're still finding our way, and so are the people we're working with who are trying to figure this out. Specifically, Congressman, with respect to your question on Pakistan's military. The Pakistani military has actually used F-16s in the tribal areas. We have agreed to a midlife upgrade because without that midlife upgrade, they can't fly at night, which is a pretty good time to fly if you're going after, you know, insurgents. And so we're saying, yes, we want to see a shift toward the enemies that we think are posing this threat to Pakistan, and by the way, posing a threat to us. We also have a history of kind of moving in and out of Pakistan. I mean, let's remember here, the people we are fighting today, we funded 20 years ago. And we did it because we were locked in this struggle with the Soviet Union. They invaded Afghanistan, and we did not want to see them control Central Asia. And we went to work. And it was President Reagan, in partnership with the Congress, led by Democrats, who said, you know what, sounds like a pretty good idea. Let's deal with the ISI and the Pakistani military, and let's go recruit these mujahideen. And let's get some to come from Saudi Arabia and other places, importing their Wahhabi brand of Islam so that we can go beat the Soviet Union. And guess what? They retreated. They lost billions of dollars, and it led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So there's a very strong argument, which is, wasn't a bad investment to end the Soviet Union, but let's be careful what we sow because we will harvest. So we then left Pakistan. We said, okay, fine, you deal with the stingers that we've left all over your country. You deal with the mines that are along the border. And by the way, we don't want to have anything to do with you. In fact, we're sanctioning you. So we stopped dealing with the Pakistani military and with ISI, and we now are making up for a lot of lost time. So this is an incredibly difficult set of issues that are all interconnected. But, you know, we can point fingers at the Pakistanis, which is, you know, I did some yesterday, frankly, and it's merited because we're wondering why they don't just get out there and deal with these people. But the problems we face now, to some extent, we have to take responsibility for having contributed to. We are developing what we think to be very positive relationships with the civilian, the military, and the ISI leadership. But I think any analyst will tell you that we can actually talk to and relate to the top leadership, but we have not had a continuing dialogue or training or contact with a lot of the middle leadership who have been influenced by the trends of increasing Islamization that have swept the Muslim world. So I put that out there because I think we have to think of the context in which we are dealing here. And just quickly on Hamas,